In this video, I will explain tension and give you some handy tips and tricks to make you better understand what a tension swatch is and how you make one. Today, we're going to be using our Crazy Sexy wool in the Sand Trooper Beige colourway. Tension is really not as stressful as it sounds. Every knitting pattern will include a tension or gauge, and all it refers to is how many stitches and rows fit into a 10cm or 4-inch area. These numbers tell you how wide and how tall your stitches are, and this in turn affects the finished size of your knitted or crocheted project. Lots of factors can affect tension, but probably the easiest one to control is needle size. For example, this swatch here was knitted on a 15mm knitting needle. This swatch was knitted on a 10mm knitting needle, and you can see that the stitches are far smaller and the fabric is a lot more rigid, whereas this one has a bit more drape. This swatch was knitted on a 25mm knitting needle, and you can see that it's a lot more open and the stitches are really large. To make a tension square, check how many stitches the pattern suggests you should be getting to 10cm and cast on a few more than that number. This will give you a bit more to measure. Work in the stitch pattern specified in your instructions until your knitting measures at least 10cm. Now you can either choose to cast off your stitches or simply measure them while your knitting is still on the needle. Lay your tension square on a flat surface. Now take your tape measure and lay it across your square. We're going to measure the stitches first, so make sure it's level with one of your rows of knitting. And when you're measuring garter stitch, it looks like this. So you're now going to count along and see how many stitches fall under the 10cm mark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now don't worry if when you're measuring you find you get a half stitch. That's perfectly normal, and a lot of knitting patterns will include half stitches in their tension. Now, when you come to measure how many rows you get to 10cm, lay your tape measure so that it follows one line of stitches like so. Now in garter stitch, it's good to remember that each ridge counts as 2 rows. And if you're wondering how to identify the stitches and rows in a stocking stitch fabric or a crocheted fabric, check out our other videos, as we have videos explaining that. So you can see 10cm, and we're going to count how many rows fall under that mark. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And you can see here that the mark goes halfway along a ridge, so it would be 13. So note down those 2 numbers. They'll come in handy, and you'll want to compare it to your pattern to make sure that you're getting the right stitches and rows, and therefore your piece will turn out the same size that's suggested in your pattern. You'll know if your tension is a little bit off, because for example here, you can see that the stitches and rows are a lot bigger. So if you're getting this when you're supposed to be getting 6 stitches and 13 rows, you know that you might need to change something. And likewise, if you're getting a fabric like this, something's not quite right. But don't worry, it's very easy to fix. For example, if your stitches are looser, so bigger, then that means that you need to either try to knit a little bit tighter or go down a needle size. Then, if your knitting is tighter and so the stitches are smaller, you need to try and knit a bit looser or go up a needle size. Once you're happy with your tension, you can unravel your square and reuse the yarn to start knitting on your project. So there you have it. Those are some tips and tricks explaining tension.